Last year, 1.45 million fans watched the college football national championship between Alabama and Texas. The two teams fought for 3 hours until finally Alabama was the only team left standing. This means that they were the best team in college football, right? Not so fast. Only 4 days before the game, Texas Christian University, otherwise known as TCU, played against Boise State University. Just as in the national championship game, the two teams were both an undefeated 12-0. After another hard-fought game, Boise State won the game 17-10. But did they get recognized as being the best team in college football? No. They had played and beaten every team they had faced this season, and they were still considered only second best. But who says that if Boise State played Alabama, they wouldn't beat them? Well, we'll never find out with this current system. So what I propose is a 16-team playoff, where we pick the best 16 teams and have them play against each other until the only two people are left standing. This would be a much better system because it would allow the teams to make more money, give NFL scouts a better chance of evaluating players, and allow teams from smaller conferences to win the championship. So some of you might be wondering, what's wrong with this current system? Well, the current system, called the BCS, or Bowl Championship Series, takes the average of 3 polls. The Harris Interactive poll, which is done by former players, coaches, administrators, as well as former and current media members. They submit their votes for who they believe are the top 25 teams in football. Each ballot that one of the members of the Harris Interactive poll is worth 325 points. 25 points going to the first place team, 24 to the second place team, all the way down to 1 point going to the 25th ranked team. After all the ballots are collected, the total amount of points are added up. The team with the most points is ranked first, all the way down to the team with the least amount of points being ranked 25th. The second poll that they use is the coaches poll. Each Division I coach has 1 ballot, where they, using the same formula as the Harris Interactive poll, they rank the teams and send in their average to combine with the Harris Interactive poll. The first 2 polls are done by real people. However, the last third of the BCS formula is done by computers. It uses 6 types of computer ranking system, all using different factors, weighted differently. Some use wins as being the most important factor. Others use strength of schedule and the conference they're in to decide which is the best team. Now, this isn't fair for teams that are from a weak conference. There are several examples of times in history where the computer rankings messed up the chances of a team getting to play for a national championship. In the 2004-2005 season, 5 teams finished with an undefeated record: Auburn, Utah, Boise State, USC, and Oklahoma. 2 of the 5 came from small conferences, with Utah and Boise State. However, they were not given a shot to play in the national championship. Instead, only USC and Oklahoma were allowed to play. This is not just a one-time example, however. In the 1998-1999 season, Tulane went undefeated and won the Conference USA championship. However, because they were a small school, they are not picked to play in the national championship. The list of teams being messed up by the BCS is growing by the year. You now have proof that the current system is not working. So, what can we do to change this? I propose that we have a 16-team playoff, where the 16 teams are elected by a combination of still using the Harris Interactive poll and the coaches poll. But instead of the computers, we go and have a website for fans, where they get to vote on who they believe the top 25 teams in the nation are. This will help in a couple of ways. First of all, the leaders of the BCS can see who the fans want to play, and then they can get higher ratings for their games. Second, it takes the computers out, who just calculate instead of watching the game. One reason why this would be better is because it would give more money to teams who play. An example of this working would be in Europe, with their professional basketball league, where they reduced their playoffs from 16 teams to 8 during the 2006-2007 season. This meant they were given this means that the sponsors were given less games that they would be able to sponsor. So they ended up competing more for those games and paying more money. The year before, an average team was given $320,000 by the companies for 8 minutes of airtime for commercials. During the next year, the teams were given $530,000, almost $210,000, or almost twice the amount as before. And I believe that this can work again for the college football. Last year, BCS schools such as the Big Ten, Pac-10, Big 12, SEC, and ACC made $1.12 million, while non-BCS schools like the WAC, Conference USA, the Mid-American Conference, and the Mountain West Conference made only $580,000. This means that if the same amount of change occurs that happened in Europe, then both teams can make much more money. My second point is that NFL scouts will be able to better evaluate players for the NFL draft. For every year, draft busts, or people who are drafted and end up not being good enough to play in the NFL, happen. I believe that one reason this occurs so often is that players from weaker conferences play against people who are not as talented as those in the higher conferences. So they are seen as being better when they are actually not as good. If they are put in a playoff system, they would be put up against stiffer competition, and then the scouts would be able to see how well they perform under pressure. If they end up being shut down and not doing well, then maybe the scouts can find out that they're not as good for the NFL. However, if they do perform well, then their draft stock can rise and they can be drafted much higher than they were before. My final point is that the current system does not establish a true champion. If you take the top 16 teams and have them play against each other until you come down to the final 2 teams, then after they have finished playing well, you will be able to see who the true national championship is. I've already given you examples where the person who won the BCS championship was not always considered the championship. With this new system, this problem can be solved. So I urge you guys, please, when this topic comes up, I ask that you be informed and that you know what to say.